Safe gun storage was a bill that the Illinois legislature passed before they adjourned June 1st, and now it's expected that Governor J.B. Pritzker is taking today to sign that piece of legislation here in Illinois. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning as we bring you the latest of what's going on in Illinois. And we've been tracking a lot of what deals with the Second Amendment. Of course, we've got the gun ban that is in the appeals courts, with the state having to defend itself against a district judge ruling that said the law was unconstitutional, banning semi-automatic firearms across the board, with a variety of different other laws that were put into place with the Protect Illinois Communities Act, including the gun registry and bans on certain capacities of magazines. So you've got that that's still at play, right? So that passed in January of 2023, challenged in courts. Here we are now in late July of 2025. So it's been 2.5 years since that law has been on the books, banning weapons, and it's been 2.5 years of litigation, getting to the point where at the appeals court now. But September 22nd, the appeals court's going to have oral arguments in that case, so we'll be watching that. But before we get to the court outcome of that case, we've got more gun legislation that's going to become law, and one of them could be today, with Governor J.B. Pritzker set to hold a bill signing ceremony about gun safety legislation. You can just deduce here that Governor Pritzker is going to sign a measure to require safe gun storage. So let's flash back a little bit. During spring session, State Representative Maura Hirschauer brought the safe gun storage bill to committee before it passed the General Assembly and was landing on the governor's desk.
To provide that it is unlawful for any person to store or leave a firearm if they know or reasonably should know that a minor is likely to gain access, and again, a minor is 18 and under in this bill, unless the firearm is secured by a device or a mechanism other than the firearm safety, designed to render it temporarily inoperable. An example of this is a cable lock, or placed, which is my preference and best practice, placed in a securely locked box or container.
So this is something that they believe is going to prohibit and prevent young people, for instance, getting access to firearms. There were a lot of questions about young people who take part in trap shooting, and they can take part in trap shooting with teams, and those teams could possibly get some kind of scholarship opportunities to go to college and advance their career in that field. This would prohibit them from being able to respect the firearm and access a firearm if necessary to for skeet shooting or whatever it may be. But ultimately it says you can't have the firearm out if there's a prohibited person in the area. Illinois State Rifle Association's Ed Sullivan pushed back on that idea. You have Hirschauer trying to correct what she says was a misinterpretation, and you've got Josh Witkowski from the Federation for Outdoor Resources also opposed to this, saying that this would violate constitutional precedents determined by the U.S. Supreme Court in previous cases. So here's that back and forth.
So a prohibited person is someone that doesn't have a FOID card. Under Senate Bill 8, Amendment number 3, they did say that if you were otherwise eligible for a FOID card, then that does not apply to you. So what that tells me is don't invite Aunt Grandma or your grandma from Wisconsin to your facility, or a cousin or someone that lives out of state, because if they would gain access to your firearm, you would be in violation of this law.
A prohibited person under this bill is a person who is not eligible to have a FOID card or not eligible to own a gun under federal law. I personally don't have a FOID card. That does not make me a prohibited person. I am eligible to apply and be granted a FOID card, or I'm eligible under federal law. So that was a misrepresentation.
That you have a right to have a firearm accessible for the purposes of self-defense. It dealt specifically with a law that required the firearms to be locked up or inaccessible via trigger lock or cable lock, just as we are dealing with here. It stated that that firearm not being accessible for self-defense is a violation of Second Amendment rights.
Now, if the governor does indeed sign the safe gun storage, also includes lost and stolen provisions, if he signs it, then you can expect there's going to be a lawsuit, and we'll see this tied up in the courts, like we are seeing the ban on semi-automatic firearms and magazines. tied up in court. And could be an arduous, long process to get to some finality as to whether these types of laws requiring somebody to lock up their firearms under certain circumstances, as whether or not it's constitutional. So you've got that measure. Another measure that was passed by a Republican deals with a different type of reporting that ultimately, he says, is going to make schools more safe. Here's State Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer talking about his bill. I'm not sure if this is something that's going to be signed by the governor, but it is something that's on the governor's desk.
This is a bill, HB 1316 is the bill that we discussed a couple weeks ago. And basically an event in my district, kid made a threat that he was going to hurt somebody with a gun. I don't know the exact phrasing of the threat, but a firearm threat was involved. The kid told the librarian. The librarian waited a little while to notify higher ups. And the parent was never notified. Neither parents were notified that the threat had happened. And so I think that in order, as a law-abiding gun owner, I look at this and I say, we have to do everything possible to keep gun violence from happening. And so this is a very simple common sense bill that says that if a threat is made, the teacher or staff that is notified must immediately notify the principal, and contact must be made with both sides, both guardians of both children, the one that made the threat as well as the individual who the threat was made on. And this is to ensure that the child does not have access to a firearm to do this, and it has to be.
So, again, this measure passed. It's on the governor's desk. Could this also be part of a package of bills the governor's going to sign today? We'll see. But some bills that were talked about briefly at the State House but weren't advanced includes a couple from State Representative Bob Morgan. During spring session, Morgan had House Bill 33 to increase the fee from $2 to $10 for when someone transfers a firearm to someone else. This measure was discussed briefly in a House committee.
Effectively, when you transfer your firearm, there's a fee. In 1992, we put into a fee for $2. That was the fee then. That is the fee now. We have not adjusted that for inflation, costs, et cetera. And one of the ideas here that I have Dave Feller here from Cook County Sheriff's Office, but one discussion that we've had is whether or not we can bring the resources necessary to really target the revocation of firearms for those whose FOID cards have been revoked.
So Morgan pushing that measure to increase the fee for firearm transfers from $2 to $10, but that didn't advance. It's stuck in Rules Committee now. Another measure that Morgan had was House Bill 43 to create a task force to look into what it would take to require insurance for Illinois firearms owners.
This is really an insurance concept that firearm ownership would require potentially insurance to possess a firearm. This would be like an insurance rider. We all have insurance in our home that you might have flooding insurance, which is kind of a rider on your underlying homeowner's insurance, or you might have cybersecurity insurance for a small business.
However, if you look at the makeup of the committee, there's 2 slots for firearms advocacy groups, 2 slots for minority appointments. The rest of the committee ends up a very lopsided mix.
So what does that mean for individuals who may have questions about the requirements to have insurance and whether or not that's constitutional? You have to have insurance to exercise your constitutional rights. I mean, that's essentially what the idea is. And there are some products out there that, could cost several $100s a year, and then you're guaranteed to have an attorney by your side, and that's more for like any legal consequences that may happen. But I think the insurance idea is more about any kind of liability there may be if, you are, or your firearm is used to harm somebody. So again, the insurance task force didn't pass. The increase of the firearm transfer fee did not pass. pass, but what the governor could be signing today, I think most likely Senate Bill 8, and that is the safe gun storage and lost and stolen provisions, and we'll see what he has to say about that today when we're back with you tomorrow here with Illinois in Focus Daily. More than 880,000 people left Illinois, taking with them $63.5 billion between 2012
using data from the Internal Revenue Service
and 2022. We'll get to you in a moment, Jim. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. And again, we've been watching how the economy is impacted by Illinois policies, and in particular, taxation, and how a lot of people over the past 11 years have left Illinois to go to other states. And we always look at U.S. Census data, and every year also, the IRS releases tax migration data that can really show you just how the money's moving across the country. So welcome back. Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning. Jim Talamonte reporting. Economist explains flight of people and dollars from Illinois. Let's go ahead and hear what his report has for us.
Using data from the Internal Revenue Service and the U.S. Census Bureau, analysts found that Illinois lost 881,012 residents from 2012 to 2022. Economist Stephen Morris says only New York and California suffered more domestic outmigration.
This is the sad story. Same thing. New York and California and Illinois are just being bled to death.
Illinois was also one of the biggest losers for personal income, with a net adjusted gross income loss of $63.4 billion from 2012 to 2022.
Some of our friends on the left and some of our Democratic friends like to say, well, taxes don't matter that much. They don't really have an impact. You're looking at the impact of taxes right here.
Moore said states like Illinois need to change or die. I'm Jim Talamonte.
So this is a report from Unleash Prosperity, and they have this website, votewithyourfeet.net, and it allows you to take a look at where exactly people are moving to, from which states, and you can change the actual year here for all the way up to 2022, the most recent data that they looked at. And if you look at people moving, let's go ahead and do this. All right, so you can compare, say, Illinois. All right, let's compare Illinois with Florida. How many people are moving from Illinois to Florida? 173,100, taking with them $19.5 billion. So from 2012 to 2022, more people moved from Illinois into Florida than moved into Illinois from Florida. Let's do Illinois and Texas. How many people? So over that time, 108,000 people, taking with them $5.8 billion in personal income from Illinois to Texas over those 10 years. What about, let's just do a neighboring state here. Illinois to, let's do Indiana. All right, so Indiana gained 92,000 people from Illinois who brought with them $3.1 billion in adjusted gross income. What about Illinois to Kentucky? 12,500 people, taking with them 490 million people. Are people moving from Illinois to New York? Let's see that. Oh, wait, no, okay. Actually, I have people moving from New York to Illinois, 6,320, bringing with them $269 million. What about people from California? Are people moving from California to Illinois? 49,000 people did. Close to 50,000 people moved from California to Illinois. Wait, no, it says here. Oh, I did it the other way. I wanted to do California to Illinois, but it's telling me that about 50,000 people moved from Illinois to California. So you can play around with this map. Go to votewithyourfeet.net, and that's just the numbers of people moving from one state to another as you look at census data compared with IRS data. So Illinois leading amongst the states. What's the political map look like? Which political party led state governments in 2012? Obviously, we know that. And Democrats have essentially controlled the state house here in Illinois for a number of years. So interesting to see these numbers. These are obviously some data sets that you can take and throw into spreadsheets and get charts and whatnot. But pretty interesting to see the map of people moving, but also the map of money. Again, go to votewithyourfeet.net. How much personal income moved from California to Illinois between 2012 and 2020. Well, let's just do this. $63 billion is how much we've lost in all that time. And from Illinois to Texas, $5.8 billion of it is how much is going. So we kind of saw those numbers earlier, but you can even tweak the time frame here. So let's just look in the past year of the latest data they have from 2021 to 2022. From Illinois to Texas, 12,259 people taking with them $1 billion. That's just in 1 year. That's just in 1 year. What about Illinois to Florida? Okay. So you've got 19,000 people moving from Illinois to Florida, taking with them $3.2 billion. Illinois to Missouri, $188 million with 1,842 people moving from Illinois to Missouri. I think you could probably just click around here and see, we're losing people to Wisconsin. Just up north, more people moved from Illinois into Wisconsin and moved from Wisconsin to Illinois, taking with them close to $500 million, 6,000 plus. Oh boy. All right. So again, we take a look at these numbers every year, and you got to take into context, too, all the money over the past 12 years that Illinoisans have taken with them when they're moving to other states. It's a lot of adjusted gross income that the state can't tax, but yet we've seen just a drastic escalation of the amount of tax dollars that the state is spending, and how that's going to be, leveled out, how we're going to correct that. Democrats say investing in education and young people and keeping young people in college here in Illinois, that way they stay and plant in Illinois. You've got Republicans saying we need to lower property taxes, we need to shrink the size of government, we need to stop spending so much every year, more and more, instead use some of the money that we're getting in taxes to pay off debt. We need to lower the cost of doing business when it comes to workers' comp costs and property taxes and payroll taxes and such. A whole host of things, right? But how those play out in a legislative session, we've watched closely, and it doesn't seem to be there's much movement on trying to address some of the policies that there are when it comes to taxation and the willingness of people to take their adjusted gross income to a place like Texas, their adjusted gross income to a place like Florida, their adjusted gross income to even a place like California. How many people moved out of Illinois to California? 2,100, taking with them $71 million. What about Illinois to New York? How many people? All right. More people moved from Illinois into New York than moved from Illinois from New York. So we keep seeing more people go, even to the other states that top these lists of people fleeing. So fascinating. All right, so we'll look at these types of economic data sets as they come out, but I think it helps try to inform what's going on and how to address it. Governor J.B. Pritzker has been asked about population decline for years now. He seems to deny that it happens, even though he says, hey, we gained population. We did gain some population in the most recent census, but that's because of the number of international migration into Illinois, offsetting the number of people moving out of Illinois into other states. So was that because of the border crisis under the Biden administration and Illinois being a sanctuary jurisdiction for non-citizen migrants? Again, something that is going to be continued to be debated. All right, it's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop.
When you go to get your SNAP benefits, when you go to sign up for SNAP benefits, what they want us to do is to say, we don't believe you about what your rent is. So you've got to go home and get your rent bill and come back and show it to us before we can approve your SNAP benefits. How about your electric bill?
the federal government is correctly telling the state of Illinois, clean up your SNAP program, be more accountable, hold your people accountable, hold your residents accountable. And Governor Pritzker, has the gall to tell people that this is a tax cut for the rich.
So a little bit of back and forth there yesterday. Governor J.B. Pritzker in East St. Louis talking about the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and I got reaction from Republican State Senator Andrew Chesney. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning for more Illinois in Focus. The live chat's always lively. And we've talked about the Food Assistance Program, SNAP, several times now, especially with the legislation that President Donald Trump enacted. That's the big, beautiful bill, all kinds of elements in there. I mean, we've talked about the SALT deduction cap being lifted and how that benefits a high-tax state like Illinois. We've talked about the issue of school choice and a tax credit scholarship program that the federal government's starting up. Very similar to what Illinois had in place with the Invest in Kids, but obviously Illinois has to opt into that. The Medicaid issues that Democrats say Republicans are trying to throw people off of Medicaid by implementing certain types of requirements, like you have to be either, if you're able-bodied, looking for work, or working or volunteering at least 20 hours a week. And the same seems to be now for SNAP, for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. So the governor's been asked about SNAP, not necessarily about the issue of what the Trump administration did, but also the issue of the error rate. And Illinois has a higher error rate than the national average. And the error rate, the payment error rate, includes overpayments and underpayments. And Illinois combines about 11+%, but when you just look at the overpayments, Illinois is 10+%, again, higher than the national average for the error payments. But yesterday, Governor J.B. Pritzker instead wanted to focus on what he said were roadblocks and barriers and red tape for people who are wanting to get Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits. Again, the governor down in East St. Louis yesterday.
They're not really trying to root out. They say they're trying to root out fraud and abuse, right? That's what they say. But it's a blatant attempt to make it harder for people to feed their families. And you know why they want to do that? Because they couldn't be cruel, could they? But let's assume they're not cruel. You know what they're trying to do? They're trying to take money away from this program and truly, not trying, they just did it, and give huge tax cuts to the wealthiest people in this country. Honestly, taking things away from people who need it and giving it to people who don't need it, that doesn't seem right to me. Does it seem right to you?
So the governor blaming Republicans for what he says are new barriers and red tape for individuals seeking to have taxpayer-subsidized food assistance through SNAP. Republican State Senator Andrew Chesney said that Republicans are just looking to make sure that SNAP is there for those who need it most.
Republicans are just asking for accountability. Republicans are saying if you want to get a subsidy from the taxpayers, if you want Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Ethel to pay for your food stamps, and you have the ability as a 25-year-old to work, get off your butt and work. I don't think that's controversial. Why are we asking people on fixed incomes to subsidize people that are able-bodied with no dependents? Why are we asking them to do something? Volunteer, do something. That's only controversial up until the last couple of years when the Democrat Party has not become the working class party. They've become the party of woke. They've been the party of gender dysphoria. They've been the party of the Democrats' elites that, want $500 meals when they locked us down in our basements and told us we couldn't leave our homes. But they went to posh restaurants like the governor of California, or when Governor Pritzker sent his family to Florida to a free state. These people are just, they have no backbone. They have very little common sense. And they will say whatever it takes, Greg, whatever it takes to get elected. And they don't care.
And Governor J.B. Pritzker, Chesney said, is a billionaire who stashes his money off of the continental U.S., and he's only interested in re-election to a third term. and Republicans have been consistently critical of the governor and the possibility that he could run for president in 2028, which would be in the middle of the governor's 4-year term. So obviously some politics at play here. The governor saying Republicans want to take benefits away from working people, while the Republicans are saying that Democrats lack common sense and don't care about accountability. Again, back to what the governor called red tape concerning people getting SNAP benefits under the new Trump administration.
The more burdensome they're making the system, the more likely it is that people will fall off on their own. So imagine you need it, but I gave you the example of someone who just doesn't happen to have their electric bill when they're sitting there signing up perhaps for Medicaid, and now they'd like to sign up for SNAP. You don't have the proof of how much you're paying for your utilities. Well, do you have time? I mean, you may be holding down a job, and you may have 3 kids, and you may not be able to go back and forth home to this office where you've got to present these things. So you may just decide, I can't do it anymore. Put on the poorest people in our state, the harder it is for us to deliver for them because the federal government has put up these barriers.
So again, red tape and barriers. I asked Chesney about, listen, I mean, the taxpayers have all kinds of barriers they have to jump through just to pay their taxes. Businesses have all kinds of red tape that they have to go through just to run a business that ultimately is taxed, and they pay all these taxes. So is it too much to ask for those who are going to be benefiting from that to prove they're eligible to benefit from that? A question that Chesney addresses.
Republicans are just asking for accountability. Republicans are saying if you want to get a subsidy from the taxpayers, if you want Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Ethel to pay for your food stamps, and you have the ability as a 25-year-old to work, get off your butt and work. I don't think that's controversial. Why are we asking people on fixed incomes to subsidize people that are able-bodied with no dependents? Why are we asking them to do something? Volunteer, do something. That's only controversial up until the last couple of years.
And again, Chesney talking about the ongoing problems with supplemental nutrition assistance programs, other taxpayer-funded programs, and encouraging that the governor go after waste, fraud, and abuse. And the governor recognized maybe there's something to say about the types of foods that people can get with SNAP. Like, should we steer them away from junk food? Again, here's the governor.
I don't disagree with you that we ought to be looking at, making sure that people actually have the resources to buy the things that are good for them, and that we discourage people from buying, candy and things that aren't good for the kids and for families. But importantly, you got to provide the resources for people before we start talking about what we're going to cut out of people's diets. How about just making sure that people actually have something to eat? And so that concerns me greatly. But I don't disagree. I've talked to a number of people about whether or not, what kinds of things are bad for people's diets and harm their health as a result. And maybe that SNAP benefits should be directed more toward those healthy, when we talked about, meats and fresh food, fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, and so on.
So the governor talking about the importance of fresh foods, vegetables, and nutritious foods instead of getting a bunch of junk food. But you saw others at the table. The Illinois Retail Merchants Association was there as well with the governor. They had a food bank that was there as well. Food banks are not SNAP. They're locally derived and organized donations and such. So it's like an extra safety net that a lot of communities have for those who still need assistance or find themselves in a short-term situation where SNAP can't be provided as quick because government obviously is a bureaucracy and such. But the Pritzker administration was there as well. The Secretary of the Department of Human Services was addressing the question of how much the Trump administration's policies on SNAP is going to cost Illinois state taxpayers for a program that traditionally had been funded primarily by federal taxpayers, but they say this is changing now to where the state's going to have to kick in, and it could be hundreds of millions of dollars in extra added state taxpayer costs.
All of these changes which are purposely bureaucratic and burdensome, will add additional cost and administrative complexity to the state, both in systems and staffing, for an overall cost to the state of $800 million every year. That end result could ultimately be a reduction in programs that most help the people we serve.
$800 million a year of extra added costs to Illinois state taxpayers, according to the Pritzker administration. Some of that could be because of the error rate that the state of Illinois has, and they have to get it under a certain error-rated percentage to not be on the hook for hundreds of millions of dollars. But they also say implementing the policies and procedures for what they say are extra checks to ensure eligibility for receiving those benefits is going to cost $100+ million as well. Chesney says, listen, he's got some suggestions on where they can find that extra money to pay for these types of benefits.
We can stop funding illegal immigrants. That'd be a good place to start. We can always look at waste, fraud, and abuse. You know, Governor Pritzker handed out so many and approved so many programs that have been just embroiled in corruption and fraud, and we see indictment after indictment and inspector general report after inspector general report of people that are misusing federal and state programs, and Governor Pritzker remains silent. Many of them are state employees, and so we, again, as Republicans, want our most vulnerable to get programs that they deserve, but we don't want that to become a lifestyle. Governor Pritzker wants to centralize that power, wants everybody to be on that government dole, and so he can then pick the winners and losers within those programs. He can implement his own DEI, his own reparations, his own winners and losers. You know, you get a grant, you don't get a grant. You're connected to the most powerful, you're not, so you get it, you don't. And so again, you know, Governor Pritzker doesn't want to address the underlying issues in Illinois. We're taxed too much. We're losing population. People don't want to live here. He has had no solution for property taxes. He has passed billions and billions of dollars in tax increases. The federal government is correctly telling the state of Illinois, you know, clean up your SNAP program. Be more accountable. Hold your people accountable. Hold your residents accountable. And Governor Pritzker, you know, has the gall to tell people that this is a tax cut for the rich. Governor Pritzker parks his money in the Grand Cayman Islands. He was the one that sent his family to Florida when he locked down the state of Illinois. I mean, there's nobody that contradicts himself more than Governor Pritzker. And now he's running for a third term and has little interest in the state of Illinois. Now he's going in Texas and he's bouncing around North Carolina, you know, doing his little liberal circles, trying to get everybody excited about him. He's a billionaire governor that has never worked an honest day in his life, and his toxic policies are destroying the state. He is asking us to live in an environment that he himself is unwilling to live. He lives around, you know, skyscrapers and walls with armed security, with $20 million vacation homes, while we are saddled with the aftermath of his very toxic and liberal policies that are destroying the state.
So there you go. Some of the back and forth over SNAP and new work requirements, which aren't new. Apparently, it's all stuff that was going on before COVID that they lifted during COVID, saying, oh, it's an emergency. We need people to get assistance, so we're just going to send money out. Well, that's changing under the Trump administration, getting back to some checks to make sure the people who are eligible for SNAP get the SNAP. And same thing for the Medicaid as well. So we'll continue to see how this unfolds. And whether or not Democrats who some may characterize are saying the sky is falling, how they may or may not be correct down the line, because a lot of what they're saying is estimations. There's 1.9 million people in Illinois on SNAP, and the Pritzker administration says more than 300,000 will lose their food benefits. Is that really going to pan out, or are we going to see that these individuals are going to need this food and they properly were of need in that area?
An Illinois driver with good credit and a DUI will get a lower premium than a driver with poor credit and no DUI. Safe drivers with a poor credit score pay a whopping $850 more annually than a driver with a DUI.
You could have like a California where those insurance companies just say, we're done with Illinois, and they leave the state.
It's a bit of the back and forth yesterday after Illinois Secretary of State Alexi Giannoulias announced the Driving Change campaign to raise awareness about some legislation he says would regulate insurance companies to no longer use zip codes or credit scores or age when it comes to determining auto insurance rates. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning here as we break things down that have happened in Illinois so that you can get your day going. And obviously yesterday, busy day with all kinds of things popping off, but they had a news conference up in Chicago where Illinois Secretary of State Alexi Giannoulias was joined by State Senator Ron Villavallum and State Representative Rita Mayfield about the Driving Change campaign. He says is going to highlight awareness about the need for insurance regulation.
Last year, our office cited more than 630,000 Illinois drivers without auto insurance. Think about it, 630,000 drivers on our roads without car insurance. So if the purpose of auto insurance is to protect the 8.5 million Illinois motorists, it only makes sense that their driving records serve as the primary factor for setting their rates. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works right now. Instead, safe drivers in Illinois are paying the price for a system that is rigged against them. Currently, insurance companies use a number of factors to determine your premium, including several that have nothing to do with your driving record. The horrible, hard truth is that car insurance companies charge you more for auto insurance based on your credit rating, the neighborhood you live in, and your age. And it really doesn't matter that you're a safe driver.
So Giannoulias, the Secretary of State, not just the state librarian, but also he says he wants to make sure that roads are safe as somebody who handles driver's licenses and things like that. And of course, Illinois has a law that you have to have at least liability car insurance in order to be on the road. And you can have your license taken away if you don't have at least liability car insurance. But he gives some anecdotes to why he says that it should only be based on somebody's driving record, not on their credit score.
An Illinois driver with good credit and a DUI will get a lower premium than a driver with poor credit and no DUI. Safe drivers with a poor credit score pay a whopping $850 more annually than a driver with a DUI that has excellent credit.
Now, the change that he's looking for has been brought up previously, and it's been something that's been debated here and there, but really hasn't advanced. Something that had teeth in it didn't advance, and something else that would have been like a rate study or a rate review also didn't advance. You got to think about it. Illinois is home to some pretty large insurance companies. I mean, State Farm, for one, and then I think Allstate as well. You've got these very large insurance companies that operate in Illinois. That State Farm has a home base in Illinois. So do they have a lot of leverage here? I mean, that's something you've got to take into consideration. But he says previous attempts just have not advanced.
We've tried during the past 2 years to pass auto insurance reforms, but have been stymied by the powerful insurance industry. In 2024, we championed legislation prohibiting the use of credit score, zip code, and age over 65 as rate-making factors. Despite passing it out of the House Insurance Committee, the bill was never called for a House vote. So this past spring, we watered down the legislation, this time requesting that we conduct a study on rate-making factors. The bill passed the House 70-39, but the Senate refused to hold a committee hearing on the matter, despite 17 of 59 senators signing on as co-sponsors.
So regardless of the efforts they put underway, they couldn't get it across the finish line. So now Giannoulias says he's got this statewide campaign he's going to run out of his office. That's essentially going to be some town hall meetings, apparently not in any rural areas, which is interesting. We'll hear the Secretary of State's response to the difference between urban areas and rural areas when it comes to insurance rates. But State Senator Terry Bryant, a Republican from Murfreesboro, said that this is not something that's going to fare well because it could push insurers out of the state of Illinois.
You could have like a California where those insurance companies just say, we're done with Illinois, and they leave the state.
And she also said that the state needs to be able to allow insurance companies to do the proper checks that they need to do, including for things like credit rating.
Yeah, I think credit score is a good indicator of whether or not you're going to be responsible enough to pay your bills.
So if you've got a good credit score, then, that means you pay your bills on time. And if you don't have a good credit score, that means you probably don't. And the location thing's interesting, right? I mean, Chicago's more congested. Urban areas are more congested. Some, higher crime rates in some areas. Where urban areas, they've got deer in the road and a lot of miles they do drive. But why should that consideration of urban areas with more congestion and more possible claims being filed versus rural areas where you might not have as many? Here's Julius responding to that question from the Center Square's Jim Talamonte yesterday.
I will tell you unequivocally that rural communities, suburbs, downstate, Rockford, are all dealing with carjacking, broken windows, cars being broken into, and to his point, this impacts everyone across the state of Illinois. Our point is, when it comes to driving, when it comes to car insurance rates, it should be based on driving record. It's almost a double punishment. If you live in a poorer neighborhood and you want to get out, you want to climb the economic ladder, you're getting punished twice for living in a tougher neighborhood. You're living in a poorer community and you're paying more because of that. That to me is patently unfair.
Again, the secretary doing this driving change campaign to raise awareness about the push to regulate insurance rates. Is that something that's going to come up in October for veto session, or is it going to wait until January? We're going to see this 6-month push to get this thing for the spring session next year. The Illinois Department of Public Health is joining with others, including the Ad Council and the Brady campaign, to bring the Pause to Heal public service announcements across the states in many different platforms. Let's talk about it here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning here with the Center Square. You can go to thecentersquare.com to get the headlines in your inbox. Just click on the subscribe button. It's free. You can get those headlines each and every weekday morning. But of course, come to YouTube, where here with the Center Square, we bring you Illinois in Focus Daily each and every weekday morning, including segments of the show here on YouTube. And if you can't catch the show live, there's the replay you can access here on YouTube, but you can also get the show in podcast form anywhere you get podcasts. So just search Illinois in Focus and you'll find it. All right, let's get into this. I talked with Christian Heine. He is Brady's Chief Programs and Policy Officer. Had a conversation with him yesterday afternoon, and he explained what the campaign's all about.
Yeah, well, thanks so much. We are incredibly excited to be here today with you to talk about the launch of the latest ads that we have in partnership with the Illinois Department of Public Health and the Ad Council to really try to spread the word and raise awareness of Illinois' Extreme Risk Protection Order, which is known as the Firearms Restraining Order in Illinois. These are tools that are designed to temporarily separate individuals who are at a heightened risk of dangerous behavior, whether or not that's a risk of self-harm or firearm suicide, or even interpersonal violence or mass shootings. These are tools that have been proven to be really effective at separating these individuals who are at imminent risk from their ability to purchase and possess firearms, so that we can really get them the help they need. The core tenet of this campaign is that we want to prevent tragedies from occurring before they ever happen or take place. And we also want to sort of create space for people to get help that they otherwise wouldn't have. So we're really incredibly excited here at Brady about this partnership and the latest phase of this public education campaign for firearm restraining orders.
So you'll likely see a lot of these ads being aired on social media, TV, radio, possibly. I'm trying to get a breakdown of just exactly how much this is costing state taxpayers it also kind of how it's being put out there. Is it primarily TV? Is it primarily social media? Is there a mix of TV and radio? So we'll try to get those numbers out for you. But the campaign starts yesterday with this public service announcement. Here is the Pause to Heal ad that they're sharing. And this is through the Ad Council, IDPH, and the Brady campaign. Let's go ahead and get that volume turned up. And let's do it.
Jay, it's me. I spoke to Mom and Dad. We don't think you should have a gun right now. It's temporary. Things felt dangerous. I think you need to talk to somebody.
I don't know which way to turn.
Jay, you took that first hard step to find someone that can help you on the path to recovery.
You sound good.
I think I see a way through.
Jay!
So again, that's the public service announcements that you could see on various media outlets. It's the Pause to Heal campaign that the Brady campaign, IDPH, and also the Ad Council are putting out there. So talking with Christian Heine, he is with the Brady campaign yesterday. He said that there are examples of how red flag laws have helped prevent violence and death, but there's also examples of where there weren't red flag laws used that caused tragedies to occur. Here's Heine discussing that a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have, unfortunately, a lot of examples of when these orders could have made a difference, and I will just point to, our Pause to Heal campaign. That's the name of this partnership. That's the name of this campaign. It launched in 2024 as sort of an innovative public-private partnership between our entities, right? The Illinois Department of Public Health, Brady, and Ad Council, to try to speak to people who maybe could use this tool if they just knew about it. And what you'll see in these latest 3 ads are exactly what you're asking about. What are the kinds of examples in which these tools have been used effectively to protect loved ones or neighbors or even roommates? And the 3 ads that you're going to see are going to depict real stories where people were able to intervene in these moments of crisis, and as a result, others who are then the respondents to these orders were able to access care that they otherwise had not had access to or had not been prompted to go seek. And so, these ads are trying to speak to the very core of what you're talking about. But I'll tell you just firsthand, I come to this work and to this movement as a survivor of gun violence. My parents were shot in an incident in 2005, 20 years ago. My dad fortunately survived multiple gunshot wounds. My mom, though, was shot and killed with a single bullet to the back. And I do believe that if this tool had existed at the time of our shooting, we potentially could have prevented our shooting from happening in the first place. So, I know that there are impacts on the stories that we hear about when the nation's attention is captured. But there are so many other stories that are happening day in and day out that we don't hear about, particularly with firearm suicide, where these tools have just proven to be wildly effective at preventing suicide and preventing tragedies from occurring in the first place. So that's what we're here to talk about.
So again, that's Christian Heine with the Brady campaign. And Illinois' law recently changed on this. If you recall, the measure that passed the Illinois General Assembly back in January of this year, Senate passes bill requiring police to confiscate guns in orders of protection cases. And this was from House Bill 4144, known as Karina's Law. It's named after a domestic violence victim who It would add the state's existing laws around orders of protection. Currently, the subject of an order of protection must relinquish any firearm in their possession to someone else who's eligible for firearms to be able to hold those, including police. But HB 4144, which the governor did sign, requires police to confiscate firearms from such individuals within a certain time frame. So, again, a lot of controversy around that law and a lot of questions about the constitutionality of it. In particular, during debate, you had Illinois State Rifle Association Ed Sullivan and Illinois Federation for Outdoor Resources Josh Witowski talking about the problems they see when it comes to the due process issue. And that due process issue is one where somebody has to be able to face their accuser before a determination can be made to take away their rights. And the concern is this law does not have that ability for somebody to be in court and to face the accusations and to respond to the accusations before the accusations are used to take away their rights. Again, here's Sullivan followed by Witkowski, and this is back in January.
So if we're going to take away a constitutional right, and everybody says we want to follow Rahimi, this bill does not follow Rahimi. And it does not follow Rahimi in relationship to ex parte hearings where the respondent does not, in essence, get a hearing which is required under the Rahimi Supreme Court case. And so
we took a look at 18 U.S.C. 922 G8 in its entirety, of which there are 3 components. Karina's bill meets the last 2 components, but it fails to meet the first component. And the first component is that the accused has the right to defend themselves in a hearing. And that's the issue here, is whether the accused has the right to defend themselves. We have a presumption of innocence in this country. I don't like having to be up here testifying like this on this one because I agree we should not be arming abusers, but you have a right to be found that first.
Again, some of the debates before this measure passed and before the governor signed it into law, which is the basis of the firearm restraining order public service announcements that the Brady campaign with the Illinois Department of Public Health is advocating for. So again, back to Christian Heine from Brady's programs and policy. He talked about the due process question, but he also talked about the question of can these red flags be raised arbitrarily, especially, for instance, public figure. Somebody has a problem with what they said. Somebody going to be able to raise a red flag and say, hey, police, go and confiscate their firearms because I raised a red flag. Can it be that arbitrary, or are there checks to prevent that from happening?
Well, look, these firearms restraining orders are not something that's rooted in sort of like a gut feeling, right? They're really the factors that courts consider in these cases are very specifically what evidence and research and epidemiology tell us are the most the highest risk factors for future acts of violence. So, for instance, there's no better predictor of future acts of violence than past acts of violence. Drug and alcohol misuse, violent tendencies and behaviors, domestic violence. These are the things that the courts have to consider. So I'll just say that the orders themselves are, and this was debated, but once again, the reason why the legislature ultimately passed this and why they've been found to be constitutional is they are rooted in the same due process that is provided in domestic violence procedures and protective orders that have been found to be constitutional and exist in all 50 states, right? It intentionally is engaging courts to consider this and getting an actual ruling from law enforcement. And if the criteria or the standards of evidence, if they don't meet those standards in their petition, then the order is denied. And once again, we're not talking about something that's a permanent prohibition. We're not even talking about a criminal procedure. We're talking about a civil process just to temporarily separate an individual from their ability to purchase and possession firearms. If they feel that anything has been done that they disagree with, there's also a robust appeals process. So there is due process pre-deprivation of rights and post-deprivation of rights that really ensure that what we have here is a robust process that is full of due process that is really just trying to, hey, how do we just temporarily protect somebody who otherwise may pose a risk to themselves or to the public And that's exactly what the research has borne out on the back end and how these tools have been used. The last thing I'll say is look, we have a study out of Duke that studied and examined the Connecticut order, their risk warrant law, their extreme risk protection order. And for every 10 to 20 orders that were issued, at least one suicide was prevented. And the campus at UC Davis has done a research study looking into a bunch of extreme risk protection orders that were issued in California around potential mass shootings, and has shown the efficacy in preventing those plans from being carried out. So this is a really robust and powerful tool. And the biggest barrier that we have right now is just public awareness.
Again, that's what he was there to discuss with me yesterday about the PSAs that they're going to be putting out, the Pause to Heal campaign that is going to be informing the public about the firearm restraining order laws in Illinois, so-called red flag laws, that the Second Amendment community worries is something that could be a, I guess, slippery slope to people having their rights taken away without having their time in court to face any kind of allegations, even if it is a temporary deprivation of rights. Now, where are we going to see all this? Heine says it's going to be all over.
Yeah, the most important part of what we're talking about today is where people can go to find these resources, right? So if you go to illinois.gov/pause to heal, you're going to be able to see the exact kind of resources that we're talking about. You'll see explanations about what these tools are. You'll be able to see exactly who can petition, what information you need to know in order to learn more if the firearms restraining order is right for you. You'll also be able to see if there are other orders that are relevant to the situation that you are facing, and you'll be able to access the ads that we're talking about here today. I would spend some time and encourage people to just get familiar with the data. What we're trying to do today, and with this partnership with the Illinois Department of Public Health, with the Ad Council, with Brady, is to start a conversation. You know, we know that only about 10% of residents of Illinois are familiar with these firearms restraining orders. These tools are not going to just save lives on their own. It's going to require the public to have a deep understanding of how they can engage with these tools to save the people that are closest to them. And we need that conversation to sort of, we're trying to bump start and jumpstart and initiate those conversations around the kitchen table, at community events, or wherever it is that friends and family may gather. So please go to illinois.gov/pause to heal, soak up this information, see if there is relevant info to be sharing with your neighbors and with your family, because that's ultimately how we're going to be able to meaningfully address this public health crisis.
Again, that's Christian Heine from the Brady campaign. A conversation I had with him yesterday, with the Ad Council joining with the Brady campaign and the Illinois Department of Public Health putting out that Pause to Heal campaign. But as I do give you all sides, you also heard what the opponents of the Illinois firearm restraining order law say. Governor J.B. Pritzker holding up legislation he signed yesterday that allows for universal mental health screenings in K-12 schools here in the state of Illinois. I'm Greg Bishop. It is Illinois in Focus Daily, where we wake you up each and every weekday morning with a review of things that are impacting you. And of course, Illinois schools, they have 800 plus school districts. I think we've got the most number of school districts in the country, but obviously your property tax is driven a lot by the schools. If you look at your property tax bill, most of it's going to your local school district, and the state is giving $350 million more each year to K-12 schools. There was a long committee hearing yesterday, and maybe we talk about it on Monday, but it was Chicago Public Schools going to an Illinois House committee talking about how much more money they need. Now they need no more program funding cuts, and they just need more money. So obviously K-12 education takes a lot of funding, but there's also a lot of criticism. Some saying that the K-12 school system in Illinois, especially in some areas, needs a lot of improvements, that the bounce back from COVID has not happened as quick, and a lot of young people are not advancing as they should So a lot of criticism for schools. But one thing that is obviously a major point of focus for some Democrats at the State House was ensuring that children have the proper mental health supports. Now, Republicans do also acknowledge the importance of focusing on mental health, but they differ on how to go about that, especially when dealing with public schools. So a measure ultimately came out of the Illinois State House during spring session that would bring about mental health checks at schools. If you go to the centersquare.com, you'll see mental health screening may have long-term impacts in Illinois, according to a legislator. So Senate Bill 1560, as Jim Talamonte reports, it essentially allows for mental health screenings at public schools starting in 2027. Here's Governor J.B. Pritzker talking a bit about it yesterday.
We know how transformational these screenings can be for kids at this age. They provide early identification and intervention so that those who are struggling get the help that they need as soon as possible. They provide early identification and intervention so that those who are struggling get the help that they need as soon as possible. They improve academic and social outcomes. They help us break down the stigma that too often is a barrier to seeking help.
And the state's superintendent of education, Tony Sanders, he also talked about how he sees this as being a huge benefit to have mental health screenings for Illinois public school students every year.
As the governor said, like vision screening, hearing screening, and dental screening, mental health screenings will help us provide timely and appropriate interventions. The earlier we identify the need, the better support we can provide that to students to help them thrive in school and in life.
Now, not everybody voted for this. People have legitimate concerns. One of those who had concerns, State Representative Stephen Reich, he was part of a different news conference with the Republicans critical of DCFS, and we did that in the previous segment. But he was asked at the tail end of that news conference about this bill that the governor was preparing to sign yesterday. Measure, again, to have mental health screenings. Again, mental health screenings that are not mandated. Parents can opt out, but school districts cannot opt out. And it's only for public schools. But regardless, Reich said that it could have some unintended consequences down the road in that child's life.
And frankly speaking, universal mental health screenings is not going to, it sounds great. It's something, oh my goodness, we do need mental health care in this state, and that is a crying need. It's from birth to death almost. But the fact is that universal mental health screenings are going to get us nothing except possibly finding reasons for denial of coverage of insurance, or running afoul of all sorts of requirements for confidentiality. We end up having kids who are screened as potential with some sort of potential mental issue. You don't know where that's going to lead, and I don't think this bill put us in any position to say that once we have universal mental health screening, what's going to be the result? Where are we going to go with that? What's going to happen when kids become adults and they look back and they say, oh, this guy had a certain amount of had indications of such and such. I'm not going to say what. No, that is a slippery slope, and I just could not support that.
So again, Reich wasn't the only one not supporting that. A whole host of people pushing back against it, ultimately raising questions. Again, Reich saying that it could have long-term implications. Maybe a kid is misdiagnosed with a certain type of mental condition, but then he grows out of it by the time he's 18, 19 years old, but somehow this is going to be there in the background, or maybe there's a mental health provider that's not up to snuff and causes some serious damage for a whole host of people and their young developing years in a school. Maybe you get some questions that the mental health experts are asking these kids. Just looking at the live chat, a couple of questions arose here. For instance, do your parents own a gun? Is that an appropriate question for a youth to be asked by a mental health provider? Are there going to be things that are off limits? Are there going to be things that they're going to be required to ask? Another thing is, a listener on the live chat says, would these mental health screenings be used to possibly prevent someone from owning firearms down the road? I have a friend from high school who was brilliant, and they wanted to go to West Point when they were young, and they had some issues with, mental health early on, or at least they were given a certain type of medication to deal with it as a child, but somehow that caught up, and even though this person was brilliant, wasn't able to advance in that, and they ended up going into a similar field and excelling there, obviously. But it's interesting how a child's history, even in the mental health space, could impact their future down the road. Maybe again misdiagnosis, maybe again a fostering to a certain type of mentality that's not necessarily healthy. I mean, there's a whole host of concerns there, obviously, but the governor signing this yesterday, and it's got some people raising some red flags. The governor yesterday also was asked about the Evanston School District here, the school district where he signed this. Apparently, the U.S. Department of Education is investigating Chutes Middle School in Evanston because of what could be how the school handles diversity, equity, and inclusion, for instance. And you've got these types of investigations being requested by parents in some cases, or the DOJ is just coming in on their own. But Pritzker says the DOJ investigations are, quote, BS.
I can't speak to the investigation that's going on specifically here, but I can speak to more broadly the investigations that have been initiated by the DOJ. And that is that many of them are just plain BS. And they're seeking to attack places where they think there are people who are vulnerable. Because if they can make you fearful, maybe they can make other people fearful.
And he says that's a tactic that's as old as time. But we'll see how that comes out, if there are findings in this investigation and so on. All right, it's Illinois in Focus Daily with the Center Square. I'm Greg Bishop. Get more headlines at thecentersquare.com. And wake up with us each and every weekday morning here for more Illinois in Focus Daily.